What's the secret weapon that taxi drivers have against Alzheimer's disease? It's not a pill or a special diet. It's their job. An amazing study shows that taxi drivers have a significantly lower risk of developing Alzheimer's. And the reason seems to lie in the very nature of their work. In this video, I'll explain how getting lost and navigating city streets could be a key to protecting your brain. Watch to the end where I talk about some other jobs that actually have a very high risk for the disease. Hi, I'm Lorenzo, a dementia care professional with over 20 years experience. In 2014, I was named the Dementia Care Professional of the Year in the US by the Alzheimer's Foundation. So this research talks about a study done at Harvard Med School. They made an incredible discovery that helped shape our understanding of Alzheimer's. They found that taxi drivers and ambulance drivers have a significantly lower risk of developing Alzheimer's. The scientists looked at US death records from 2020 to 2022, and this covered just about all the US population during that time period, providing a pretty robust data set for analysis. They focused on the occupations reported by each individual. In total, they had nearly 9 million people. As this graphic shows, they found that taxi and ambulance drivers had a lower proportion of deaths from Alzheimer's than any other job. And even after adjusting for things like age at death, sex, race, ethnic group, and educational attainment, these two professions still had the lowest risk for Alzheimer's among the entire population. Now, this finding conflicts with some long-established notions about Alzheimer's and has sparked interest in potential protective factors associated with these professions. So what's the reason for this very strange outcome? Researchers suspect that it's due to the specific aspects of taxi and ambulance driving. These jobs often require constant mental mapping. You need to decide quickly if you'll go left or right at an intersection. They believe that regular use of spatial memory is a key factor in lowering Alzheimer's risk. Is working as a taxi driver better than doing crossword puzzles or even brain training games? Scientists have discovered unique structural aspects in the brains of people who use navigation skills on a daily basis that suggest it provides protection against Alzheimer's. The hippocampus is a part of our brain, and it's shaped like a little seahorse. It helps for forming new memories and navigating spatial environments. It's also one of the first areas that's affected when you have Alzheimer's. And the additional concept of plasticity is important here too. Our brains aren't static. They constantly reshape themselves based on what we do and learn. And in the case of the taxi drivers, their brains respond to the intense demand of navigating complex city streets. This study looked at London taxi drivers. London is a really complicated city to navigate. Part of this is due to the fact that the road network evolved over centuries, long before cars were even a dream. It's a patchwork of narrow, winding streets, often following ancient paths and property lines. So taxi drivers there are extra special. The taxi drivers in London were found to have larger hippocampi than people who did not drive taxis. And the size of the hippocampus was bigger the more and longer they worked, suggesting that this part of the brain stores spatial knowledge and can even grow in response to the demands you place on it, just like a muscle when you lift weights. And this study, comparing the brains of experienced taxi drivers to people who didn't drive taxis, revealed fascinating differences. Taxi drivers had longer hippocampi with larger head and tail portions, again suggesting that years of spatial navigation might lead to physical changes in the brain. But the changes didn't stop there. When taxi drivers performed tasks in a brain scanner, researchers observed increased activity in a part of the brain called the fusiform gyrus. This part of the brain is responsible for recognizing objects and faces, and the heightened activity in the brain scan suggests that taxi drivers may have advanced visual processing abilities compared to the average person. Recognizing landmarks, knowing what is to the north and south, right and left, and so on, all seem to support a more Alzheimer's resistant brain. While we can't all become taxi drivers, this information opens up new possibilities for cognitive health. It suggests that engaging in regular navigation tasks and challenging our spatial memory could possibly help our brains. So the next time you're tempted to rely solely on GPS navigation, consider that finding your way manually can give your brain a really valuable workout. At this point, you might be wondering how you can train your own spatial memory. The good news is you don't have to drive a taxi. There are several ways you can challenge and improve spatial memory in everyday life. One way is to practice mental mapping. When you're in a familiar place, try to visualize the layout of the area in your mind. Picture the streets, the landmarks, and how they relate to each other. Experts say this exercise can help strengthen your spatial awareness and memory. Another approach is to use physical maps instead of relying solely on GPS. When planning a trip, look at a map beforehand. Try to memorize the key routes and landmarks. During your journey, look at the map to orient yourself. This hands-on navigation experience can exercise your spatial skills in a way similar to taxi drivers. You can also take part in activities that require spatial reasoning. Jigsaw puzzles, for example, challenge you to mentally rotate pieces and visualize how they fit together. There are also 3D types of puzzles where you need to create certain shapes, which offer a similar challenge. Some research has been done on video games too, and it suggests that navigating virtual 3D environments can also provide a workout for your spatial memory. One study showed promising results. The researchers trained mice in spatial memory tasks and found that this led to an increase in the hippocampus. The mice were trained to navigate a maze. After several weeks of training, the scientists observed significant growth in the mice's hippocampi. Another study conducted in healthy older men found that 4 months of spatial navigation training improved performance and stabilized the size of the hippocampus, with benefits that lasted after training ended. This study was significant because it demonstrated for the first time, by measuring the same people at different points in time, that spatial navigation affected the size of the hippocampus. So challenge yourself with spatial tasks, and you may be able to strengthen the same neural pathways that provide taxi drivers with their cognitive advantage. While we're focused on the unique brain benefits of taxi driving, it's important to consider other factors that affect Alzheimer's. Education and occupation play significant roles in shaping our cognitive health. Let's start with the concept of cognitive reserve. This refers to the brain's ability to cope with damage and maintain function. It's like having a backup system that kicks in when parts of the brain are affected by disease. Education is believed to build this reserve. Experts feel that with greater mental capacity, you can lose a little and still function normally. It's like having a bigger gas tank in your car. You can drive further before you run out of fuel. A study published in JAMA, covering almost 600 seniors, found that low education doubled the risk of developing Alzheimer's. This supports the idea that more education might provide a cognitive buffer. But this concept isn't without its controversy. Some researchers argue that education simply delays the symptoms. And the same JAMA study also looked at occupation, but in a slightly different way than the study that highlighted the low risk of taxi drivers. The researchers found that a lower lifetime occupational attainment increased the risk of Alzheimer's by 2.25 times. Jobs that require complex problem-solving, decision-making, and continuous learning might help build and maintain cognitive reserve. However, the results of the taxi driver study challenged some previous ideas about dementia. Being a taxi driver is a noble profession, but there are many other jobs in the study that require a lot more education and that you might feel represent a higher occupational achievement. And examples include chemical engineers, CEOs, and surgeons. If anything, this simply supports the notion that it's really hard to understand Alzheimer's and how it manifests itself in any given person. The connection between education, occupation, and Alzheimer's risk is complex. I live in a college town and many of my clients are retired professors. Based on education and career achievement, you'd think that these folks would be immune to dementia, but their reality is far different. But what does this mean for you? It means that all these strategies can help, but none guarantee protection against the disease. One fascinating thing about this taxi driver study is that it also lets you explore the risk of Alzheimer's of other professions. Hover over the dots and see what pops up. You can do this online using the link I provide in the description. Taxi and ambulance drivers have some of the lowest risk, but who has the highest? According to the study, the job with the highest risk for Alzheimer's is pumping station operators, and the one with the second highest risk is electrical and electronics repairers in industrial and utility settings. What might this tell us? What do these jobs have in common? Well, both are exposed to low-frequency electromagnetic radiation. Pumping station operators work around massive pumps, like the ones found in oil and gas plants or water treatment facilities. Pumping stations utilize powerful electric motors to drive the pumps. The electric currents flowing through them produce electromagnetic fields. And this study suggests a link between this precise type of electromagnetic exposure and Alzheimer's. It was conducted in Finland and the US and found that jobs exposing workers to low-frequency electromagnetic radiation were associated with a higher risk for Alzheimer's. The odds ratio was 3, meaning these workers were 3 times more likely to develop Alzheimer's. Low-frequency electromagnetic radiation is common in industrial settings. It's the foundation of AC power systems because it helps move electricity over long distances. This is an area where more research could be done, but the idea that electric fields affect our health is not new. This publication, for example, from the World Health Organization, said that low-frequency magnetic fields are possibly carcinogenic. But what is it about electromagnetic fields that affects our brains? Scientists think that electromagnetic fields mess up the way calcium works in the brain. Calcium balance is needed for healthy neurons and proper brain function. And another thought proposes that electromagnetic fields might activate immune system cells. These cells play a vital role in brain health, but when overactivated, contribute to inflammation and degeneration of brain cells. This is fascinating stuff, but what can we learn from it? Two professions with low Alzheimer's risk are taxi drivers and ambulance drivers. Researchers say it's due to the degree of spatial awareness needed in their jobs, which helps keep the hippocampus strong. Two occupations with very high Alzheimer's risk are pumping station operators and electrical and electronics repair people. This agrees with studies that say that a lot of exposure to low-frequency electromagnetic radiation can affect our brain health. Ways to keep our brain agile include not using our GPS once in a while, and trying to get around the old-fashioned way with maps. Other things we can do include puzzles and games that challenge spatial awareness. Electrical radiation is all around us, and it's hard to avoid, but if you have the option of doing so, it could be a plus for your health. Even though the data was comprehensive, it still had inconsistencies with other concepts that have been well researched, including the protective effects of education and occupational achievement. The bottom line is that we are all different, and our susceptibility to Alzheimer's varies. Aside from using maps and avoiding electromagnetic fields, our best bet is to optimize the lifestyle factors that have been proven to keep our brains strong. This includes exercise, a healthy diet, and adequate rest. Please see the other videos in my channel, all devoted to these topics, and how you can take the best care of yourself and your loved ones. Thank you for watching.